Ben DuBose, Rockets Wire, also done some work with us here, Clutch Fans, and also Locked On Rockets. Ben, appreciate the time. Should we expect that Rafael Stone gets aggressive tonight and moves into the back end of round one, or do we not see the Rockets name tonight?
I wouldn't expect it, but I think you should keep an open mind. I think that report yesterday from Kelly Iko over at Yahoo Sports about the Rockets taking more of a wholesale approach to the roster and basically everyone not named Amen Thompson, the team at least being willing to listen on in terms of deals. I think that's fairly accurate. So when you cast a net that wide and you know how strong the top of the Western Conference is with the Thunder and the Spurs, you can't rule anything out. And the Rockets definitely have the types of players and future picks as well that could bring in a first-round pick tonight. Not saying I'm expecting it, but, you know, when you hear them casting a net that wide, it would be silly to rule it out.
When you look at the move for Giannis Antetokounmpo and the report that came out last night by Shams that Jaylen Brown was a part of a package by Boston, and this is now the second time that Jaylen Brown's name has been brought up as part of a package trade to move off of him to bring in a premier player, does that maybe pique interest for Rafael Stone to call up Boston and say, we understand that he's going to be tough to move, but let me offer this package. If you think that it's good enough for you, let's go ahead and make this deal and bring him on down here. Because if you don't want him anymore, we sure as hell would love him in our backcourt.
I mean, if it was just Jaylen Brown, the basketball player, absolutely. I think the fear is Jaylen Brown, the contract. In today's NBA, with the first and second aprons as restrictive as they are, if you're giving out a deal that's like $60+ million in annual value, which is what Jaylen Brown's going to be at the next few years, I think it's 3 years, $183 million left. You've got to feel really good about that guy being a centerpiece. Like, one thing Rafael Stone has done really well in his tenure is negotiate good terms on contracts. Şengün is a flawed player, but to get him below $40 million a year is a really good deal. I'm sure they're going to try and do the same with Amen Thompson this offseason. So even if a guy like Jaylen Brown is able to put up close to 30 points per game, if you're paying him upwards of $60 million, that's a very high bar to clear for it to be worthwhile and to build a championship team around him. So that's why I'd be a little bit surprised if they go in that direction. And quite frankly, it's why it shocked me that the Bucks went with the Miami offer, because I think the way the modern NBA is going, especially with the revised lottery odds for the drafts, quantity is becoming so much more important. You want more bites at the apple in terms of, you know, future draft picks, opportunities in the lottery, young players. And so you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket like a Jaylen Brown unless you are so convinced that this is the guy. This can be the number one, or I guess a upper echelon number two on a title team. I think he's a really good player. I don't know if he's quite at that level. And so I think that's the hesitation. It's not Jaylen Brown, the basketball player. It's Jaylen Brown, the contract. That's why I don't think the Rockets would bid super aggressively on him. And it's why it doesn't shock me that the Bucks went with the Miami deal instead of the Boston one.
Let's just say that they did, though, and that they were aggressive going after Jaylen Brown.
Okay.
What does that look like in terms of a trade package? Is it hey, Alperen Şengün, a couple of draft picks? Is it it's a sign and trade to go get rid of one of our key pieces for the long term, like Tari Eason? What does that entail for both sides to walk away winners?
Yeah, so one thing that's going to be different for the Rockets this upcoming season, and really starting this offseason, they will have more salaries that they can trade. What really put them behind the eight ball last year was being hard capped at the first apron, and also the terms of the Fred VanVleet contract extension, or the restructure, basically gave him a no trade clause last season. He will not have it this year. So for this upcoming year, they won't be hard capped, and they'll have 3 expiring salaries of significance. Dorian Finney-Smith, Fred VanVleet, between the two of them, that's almost $40 million. And then Clint Capella as well. Well, I think technically Capella has a small amount guaranteed for next season, but I mean, you're getting close to $50 million in expiring salaries there. So in theory, you could make a deal work even without giving up someone like an Alperen Şengün and be in the ballpark financially for any big name. With that said, I do think that from an asset standpoint, you'd probably have to give up, Şengün and some of those future picks that you have from the Suns or the Mavs, something along those lines, just because it's got to be worth the while of the other team. Unless it's like the Julius Randle trade of last night where it's a salary dump, unless it's something like that, the Rockets would probably have to give up one of their young core guys. And I just tend to think that Şengün, maybe Reed Shepherd, Tari Eason in a sign and trade, I think those are the more likely ones out of the young core that the Rockets would part with. I don't think they would part with Amen Thompson. And I also don't think they'd be willing to part with Jabari Smith. Not so much that he's untouchable, but I just think very young, great contract. And I think Jabari is a situation where he's probably more valuable to the Rockets than he would be in a trade. So I would say anyone not named Amen or Jabari is in play, not expecting it by any means. But I think if a big deal were to happen, that's what it might look like, at least from the standpoint of, selling off someone from the young core that would have value to another team.
Ben DuBose joining us here on the Morning Drive with Dan and Cole, Sports Talk 790. Ben, just talking about a couple of those names you mentioned, we understand why reports like this come out, drum up interest, its agents, whoever it might be. But what does your gut tell you right now when it comes to Alperen Şengün and Kevin Durant? Are they playing together in 2026 and 27?
So the smart money is yes, simply because it takes two to tango. But like with this team, I do wonder, and it's why I do think the Rockets will explore the market, if it makes sense to get in better alignment. Because I think if you're trying to win at the highest level right now, and the Rockets are a very good team, they've won 52 games the last 2 years, but the Spurs and the Thunder each won 60 plus. So there's a tier that the Rockets have to go. And while getting Fred and Steven Adams back will certainly help, I don't think you can expect that alone to take the Rockets to the level of the Spurs and the Thunder. So if you're trying to jump up 10 plus wins and compete with the best of the best next season, I think as currently constructed, there's a couple of primary issues. Defensively, it's hard to play Şengün and Reed Shepherd together because that's two minus defenders that you're trying to cover for. There's simply too much that the other three players have to do. And so if you can't play both of those guys at the same time for very long, it's going to limit your offensive ceiling. And then on the other end of the court, Amen Thompson and Alperen Şengün, right now, neither of them can really shoot beyond 12 feet or so. So if the floor is compressed, it's going to be tough to win at the highest level. We saw a big part of the NBA Finals, how the Knicks took down the Spurs, was having Karl Anthony Towns as a stretch five that could space the floor. So I think if you're trying to win at the highest level right now, you've got to question how that young core fits together. Now, with that said, the counter to that would be, look, these guys are all like 23 years old or younger. It's entirely possible that over time, Reed Shepherd, Alperen Şengün, they get better defensively. On offense, maybe Şengün or even Amen eventually develops a three-point shot. Like, that's happened in the NBA. Brook Lopez is a guy who entered the NBA 15 years ago, did not shoot threes at all, and now he's a marksman. It's rare, but it does happen. So maybe those types of players improve as shooters as the years progress. I don't think it's reasonable to expect that by the time they report to training camp in September. And so if they aren't, if you're playing the long game and you're saying, even if it doesn't happen this year, we think these guys are young enough, we believe in them enough that in the big picture, it's worth it to be patient. If that's the case, I'm not sure how much sense it makes to roster a 38-year-old Kevin Durant, who would probably have a market from teams that are more ready to win at the highest level right now. So that's why I do think the Rockets will explore. They're not in a bad situation. They shouldn't make a bad deal just to make a deal. But at the same time, I think you've got to be realistic with this roster. And if you want to err on the side of the young core and giving them a long runway, a longer period of time, I'm not sure where a 38-year-old Kevin Durant fits into that if you can trade him for assets that are a little bit younger. And conversely, if you do believe in Kevin Durant and Steven Adams and Fred VanVleet and all these veterans, you can throw Amen Thompson into that mix as well. And you think, hey, we're a move or two away from really being able to challenge the top of the West right now, then I don't know that the young core, at least for next season, is the right fit. So I think those are the conversations that behind the scenes they've got to be having at Toyota Center.
I do wonder, is part of the problem depth with this team? Because it felt like more often than not, how many times we were just looking at, hey, it's got to be Reed coming off of the bench or Tari coming off the bench. And you'd be lucky if Josh Okogie was able to have a double-digit game. But what really I felt separated teams like San Antonio and Oklahoma City was they had good depth. But is it more than just that? Like, you can go ahead and expect to have back a hopefully healthy Steven Adams and that Fred VanVleet is going to be able to play at the top of the rim. But, like, At the same time, what's the missing spark right now that would catapult Houston into that conversation of, look, we're not Oklahoma City, we're not San Antonio, but we know clear as day we're better than Denver, we're better than Minnesota, we're better than Los Angeles, and teams still have to worry about us because if we get hot, we're going to go on a roll.
Yeah, I hope it's depth. I think that's the easiest spot to upgrade. We heard Ime Udoka say it after they lost Game 6 to the Lakers and their season ended, that they felt they had too many duplicates at the end of the roster. So there's signings you can make. I think you should keep in mind that for the first time as owner, Tillman Fertitta paid the luxury tax last season, and they knew by the trade deadline that that team, especially after losing Fred and Steven, was not going to win a title. The reason they paid the luxury tax was to keep these tradable salaries on the books, guys like Dorian Finney-Smith and Clint Capella, who I mentioned earlier. So I think those are trade candidates this offseason. They paid the tax for a reason, so you could aggregate those salaries and bring in someone of significant stature to the bench. I think the the second round and even the late first round has really changed the last few years with NIL keeping more of the young guys in college basketball. You're seeing the second round have prospects that are a lot older because it doesn't make sense to declare early for potentially a non-guaranteed contract. So these older prospects, I'm looking at some of the mocks that, for example, have the Rockets selecting Emmanuel Sharp out of U of H at pick 39. That's someone, he defends at a high level under Kelvin Sampson. He's going to be 23 years old next season. Could he give you some 3-and-D minutes off the bench that in the playoffs went to a Jayshawn Tate? Yeah, he potentially could. He might not have star upside, but in the short term, these second-round picks are more ready to play immediately than they used to be because of the NIL rules sort of changing the landscape and what it looks like. So I do think that between trades, signings, second-round draft picks, you can fortify the depth for sure. However, to your point, I do fear a little bit that they need something bigger than that, because as much as you can point to Fred and Steven coming back, look, other teams have injured guys coming back as well. The Thunder were missing Jalen Williams for nearly the entire season. Him coming back healthy is going to lift them to another tier. So you can't just sit on your laurels and expect that Fred and Steven coming back is going to fix everything, because even if they do come back healthy and they're who they were before the injuries, other teams have their own injuries and those guys are going to come back as well. So that's why I do keep going back to the Rockets need to be in a little bit better alignment. Maybe it's a roster that fits more cohesively together in terms of that top 8, top 9, the clear playing rotation, or from a timeline perspective, maybe erring on the side of a little bit more youth and giving them a little bit more time to cook. I think alignment, that's what I'm looking for. Depth is the low-hanging fruit. They can certainly address that maybe as soon as tomorrow night when they have the 2 second-round draft picks. But beyond that, I think there's ways that you can get the overall roster in better alignment to build for not just this season, but into the future.
We can expect a busy and interesting offseason, no question about it. So I suspect this probably won't be the last time we talk with you, Ben. Again, he's Ben DuBose. You can find his work with Rockets Wire. Also, he's done some work with us here at SportsTalk 790, Clutch Fans, and also Locked On Rockets. Hey, Ben, really appreciate your time this morning. And like I said, we'll catch up with you again very soon.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for having me, guys.